As I said, my name's Ewan Campbell. I'm a Senior Procurement Specialist at Scotland Excel. So I'm just going to run you through an introduction to Scotland Excel itself and just some of the opportunities that are available to you guys. I've worked across a few different teams, first education and now in the construction, transport and environment side of our portfolio. So we just go into the next one, please. So Scotland Excel is a national centre of procurement expertise, and we specialise in the local government sector. So we were established in 2008 as a non-profit shared service funded by all of Scotland's 32 local councils. Our services are designed to help our members deliver sustainable services that every community needs and realise a host of social, economic and environmental benefits from that spend as well. We've got an extensive portfolio of collaborative frameworks worth about 1.9 billion, and it covers transport, environment, construction, social care, and some corporate services and ICT as well. Our frameworks help our members to source a wide range of goods and services. They then choose which frameworks to use and which suppliers they want to work with. We're also committed to delivering contracts which support a greener, more sustainable Scotland too. If we're just on just a slide before that, Fran, sorry. So Scottish public sector spends approximately 11 billion a year buying goods, services and works, and they've split the procurement of that into 4 categories, as you can see there. Scotland Excel, we fit into category B alongside the other sector-specific centres of expertise, which Mandy mentioned, such as APUC, NHS procurement, things like that. So we coordinate frameworks and DPSs for the local authorities. We recognise that we play a key role within the public sector, and we have ambitious plans to support our councils driving change across Scotland, playing our part in supporting the local economies. If you just move on, Pat. As we're aware, there's a huge amount of work invested in developing the framework tenders, but also in the bidding to get on them as well. So we work with collaborative contracting and basically in order to benefit suppliers and the buyers. We'll just run through a couple of key benefits. Some of these Mandy covered as well, so we'll just go through a couple of them here. A big one that councils are concerned about is the compliance with the regulations. So we can ensure that basically they are responsible and being accountable and having everything set out clearly for what they're trying to achieve. We can achieve efficiencies in these processes as well. So once the tenders are awarded, that's you don't need to tender for each of the Scotland Excel members unless it is a mini competition, Mandy mentioned, but we can cover that later. Transparency is a big thing. So throughout the tender process, all suppliers have access to the tender documentation and information, like your evaluation criteria, the specifications, the contract, etc. So everyone has access to that. Over 70% of the suppliers on the Scotland Excel frameworks are SMEs. We've got multinational suppliers right down to micro businesses with just 1 or 2 employees, and we're working on approximately 60% of suppliers are Scottish, with the majority of the rest of them being from the UK. The majority of the frameworks are also broken down into lots or sublots to ensure they provide opportunities that are inclusive to all. Again, we'll look at that in a wee sec. And again, as Mandy mentioned, being awarded onto the frameworks is not a guarantee of orders or business. Each member will go through their own process of deciding which supplier they should choose. They do this in conjunction with their own standing orders, and this will vary between buying organisations. Next one, please. Next slide, sorry. So again, we looked at frameworks and DPSs, and flexible frameworks is another one we'll cover shortly as well. So the importance of these really just relates to that is what we do. So we've got over 100 associate members in the 32 councils accessing these collaborative opportunities that we put out. The needs across those members can be really varying, and the best value supplier for one may not be the best for another. The majority of our tender exercises are frameworks. We've got 3 DPSs, and again, as Mandy said, they are becoming a a more popular option as we go forward. The tenders, regardless if it's a framework or a DPS, are structured in a way to encourage and facilitate SME participation. And we carry out market research to help determine the lot structure and discuss this with suppliers in the market ahead of time. The contract value, again, we mentioned that earlier, so that's not a kind of an exact figure that will be spent for that framework, but it gives us an idea, and they can vary from 300k over 4 years right up to something like 375 million in 1 year. So it can be quite dramatic in terms of difference there. And it's important to clarify you don't need to be able to deliver that value of product that we specify. It's just a portion of that. As mentioned, duration-wise, we tend to go for 4 years. That basically just justifies the time spent developing the contracts and the effort it takes for you guys to get up to bid and go on there. So we want to make sure it's a kind of decent duration to justify those efforts. Within Scotland Excel frameworks, again, we'll use mini competitions or direct awards, and that's specific to each framework. If there's a choice, the buyer will decide which option suits them best. So you may work with one council who does direct awards, and then you do another one who prefers to use mini competitions. If we just go to the next slide, just a quick look at our portfolio. You can see there, as I mentioned before, a variety of different things we cover. There's currently 70 or approximately 70 live frameworks and DPSs right now, with another 20 in development at the moment. There's a mixture of products, services, supply only, supply and delivery, consultancy and works as well. You can also have a look on our website as well, which will provide you with a full and up-to-date list, which we will then, as you saw, put onto the forward plan as well. So on the next slide, you'll just see, again, in terms of our DPSs, so you now know, or you should hopefully now know, a kind of rough idea of how they work in terms of a couple of ones that we use. So one is the treatment of recyclable and residual waste. So it's got 22 different lots, and the reason we went for a DPS with that is basically it's a changing marketplace. Legislation is quite intense in that sector, and the differing council needs drove this to be a DPS rather than a framework. It means there's more flexibility for all parties involved, basically. And as a provider, you can bid for one or two or any of the lots on that framework, or that DPS, sorry, which is great. So if we need, or the council are looking for new entrants to the market, then it's ideal. On to the next slide. In terms of the lotting structure for our frameworks, we'll just look at a couple of kind of live examples of these and the different ways we'll split these up to help encourage competition and new entrants. So a common one is doing it by product service or product group. So we'll do some market research, analysis, some supplier meetings, and then discussions with the councils themselves to determine which product groups should be lotted together. This one is for education materials. So it's reflective of the kind of specialisms within that marketplace. There are some suppliers who bid for just one lot, others will go for a few, and some will try and cover it. Some of the kind of larger companies will go for all of them. The aim is, as I said, is to encourage SMEs to bid, and they only need to bid for one. The tender is scored on a lot by lot basis, which means your submission for each lot is only compared to the other submissions for that one. You don't lose points on a lot if you didn't bid for it, and you don't get extra points for bidding for more than one. The next slide will just show another way we do it, which is by geography. That very much depends on the commodities. You'll see there a good example there being milk delivery to schools. So again, same idea in terms of using the market research, consulting with the suppliers and the councils, but we'll split this by product grouping and geographic area. It just means that basically we can ensure that the more kind of rural areas in Scotland are going to be covered. The next slide is showing an example of our tyres framework. Again, just showing a mixture of, if you can only supply, then that's fine. You could go for one or two of those lots, but if you could supply and fit, then you've got the option to go for multiple. It just leaves it open to the suppliers to decide. On the next slide, just look at the ability to service. So this is slightly different from, well, very different from the geographical lot I just mentioned. The ability to service is present in all tenders and is declared at the overall framework level. So you select which council or councils you can supply or service. And if we use that education material example I just looked at there, there's no geographical lotting, but if you cannot supply products to all council areas in Scotland, you would basically just select which ones you can do. And again, this is not a scored element of the tender, so you don't get extra points for being able to service them all, and you basically just pick which ones you want to do. Next again, please, Fran. Thank you. Mentioned them briefly there, so flexible frameworks. So the procurement regulations covering social care allow for certain arrangements that are not really permitted in other commodity areas. So an example of this is a framework where you can reopen for new bidders during the lifetime rather than have it shut off for that 4-year period. Scotland Excel has adopted that for some of our social care contracts, and we refer to them as flexible frameworks. On the face of it, they look and act like regular frameworks, but as I mentioned, they can reopen either at set intervals or on a demand basis. For example, our care and support framework, if there's enough demand from the councils for additional services or new service providers for their areas, the framework can be reopened for them to be able to put a bid in, which is great and keeps kind of frontline services operating. Thank you. In terms of the framework call-off process and the DPS, you see there direct award and mini competition. I'll not go back into that again because Mandy covered that pretty much perfectly. We would basically cover that in the same way. The next one kind of covers our framework agreements themselves, and the kind of different elements involved in that once you're then kind of part of the partnership with us, once you've been awarded onto a framework. So some of these kind of elements can include pricing. So if that was part of the tender and a scored element, it will become part of the agreement going forward. We'll have our terms and conditions. So you'll often have a standard set of T's and C's to follow, and then generally another more specialist one specific to that commodity area. The T's and C's are provided as part of the tender, and they basically must be agreed to in advance. You will always have the provision to query or request reasonable adjustments as well at that point during the tender process. Community benefits for the local authorities now plays a massive importance for them. So generally all of our frameworks now will contain some form of arrangement for community benefits provision, and either you're offering or agreeing to them. Management information is another key one. So we will require suppliers to submit regular management information so that we can monitor spend savings on behalf of the members. It's also used to analyse purchasing patterns for contract reviews and renewals, and the requirement to provide this information forms part of these agreements. And just on to the next slide, please, Fran. So when a new framework is implemented, we will mobilise the framework with awarded suppliers. So this could be just as simple as an information pack sent out to you, or individual meetings with suppliers, or sometimes for new frameworks, we'll do large mobilisation events as well. In terms of contract management, contracts are monitored throughout the period of award to check that they are continuing to meet the needs of our members. As part of this process, we'll meet with suppliers on a regular basis to discuss contract performance. These main meetings, we prefer to keep them face-to-face, but they can be done online as well, depending on schedules. And we'll usually look to do them sort of 1 to sort of 3 or 4 times a year, depending on the risk and complexity of the contract. In terms of awareness raising as well, it's been awarded onto a framework, as Mandy mentioned. So there's some background noise, but noisy Labrador drinking water. Apologies for that. But as Mandy mentioned, awareness raising is a big thing for these frameworks. So you've been awarded onto a place can help you raise your profile of your organisation. Although as we mentioned, you don't need to just wait for orders. You can proactively speak to the councils as well and take that upon yourself. If we just next, this one we're already on. So as you kind of mentioned, the main kind of area to look for opportunities is Public Contract Scotland. Oh, sorry, just the one before France. Sorry, yeah, that one there. Sorry. So basically, yeah, anything that we put out there has to go into Public Contract Scotland. So I would, yeah, if you've not already, I would highly advise you to get registered on there. If you see a contract notice for Scotland Excel Framework opportunity, there's always a link provided to the other site, PCS Tender. So that's the electronic platform that us and other public sector bodies use to exchange the tender information and put it out there. Suppliers who want to bid for one of our opportunities just need to complete and submit the relevant tender documents on the PCS tender site. For avoidance of doubt, suppliers don't need to be a Scotland Excel member. We don't operate with lists of preferred suppliers for our frameworks. It's open for all to bid. We've just got there on this slide here the 3 types of notice that you'll see on Public Contract Scotland. So the first one would be that we would put out as a PIN notice, we call it, or a prior information notice. So we'll put that out up to 12 months in advance, and the purpose of that is to alert the market to our intention to tender. Basically, just like Amanda said, they're trying to keep things fair and give bidders and suppliers as much opportunity as we possibly can to be organised. So when we publish a PIN, we'll also hold supplier meetings, engagement sessions to discuss what the kind of market conditions are like at that point. The next one is the contract notice. So this is used to notify the market that a tender opportunity is now live and can be bid for. It contains detailed information in relation to the opportunity. And then the last one there is a contract award notice. That basically goes out to notify you of the outcome of the tender process. But if you have gone through that tender process with us, we would provide you with more written information of that prior to that as well. Next slide there. Thanks, Brent. So you see there on Public Contract Scotland, they basically have these things called CPV codes, so Common Procurement Vocabulary. You can choose as many of them which would be relevant to your organisation. So that means when people like any of us buyers then search for that, you will then get an alert linking back to the opportunity that's approaching. And then on to the next one. Yeah, so that's just a little look at our website as well. So as I said, you don't need to register with us. It just needs to be on Public Contract Scotland. If you're on our website there, if you look at our services and collaborative contracts, again, you can we keep that nice and up to date for people to access, so that you can see what's live and what's coming basically. And yeah, just on to the next slide. So just a very quick summary of basically how to get onto one of the Scotland Excel frameworks. So existing frameworks are closed to new entries unless, as I mentioned there, either the flexible frameworks or one of the DPSs. All framework opportunities must be advertised on the Public Contract Scotland site. To be awarded a place on the framework, you bid for that tender via the Public Contract Scotland tender site. And if successful, you'll then be awarded onto the framework alongside other potential suppliers. And the buying organisations will then call off from the awarded suppliers that are on there, as Mandy kind of covered with the direct awards and DPSs, mini competitions. And there, just again, you can see, we'll give you access to this later as well, but this is just a kind of live picture of what we're out to tender with right now, just to show you kind of how broad that kind of offering is really. And yeah, that's pretty much very whistle stop, very quick as well.